Well, at the end of the day, the ultimate currency is probably bullets.
Natural Order Podcast, episode 18. Yeah, go Vlad. Go Vlad. Welcome to the Natural Order Podcast with your hosts, Brian O'Leary and Adam Haman. All right, Natural Order Podcast back again. Brian O'Leary and Adam Haman with you.
Hello, Brian.
Hello. So last couple episodes we did year in review, and this we had in our mind to maybe do 2024 prediction episode, or kind of get the flavor of what's going on there in culture, since it's one of the pillars of our show. So,
yeah, predictions are easy. I have my
Yeah.
crystal ball. I'm totally ready.
yeah, but we also wanted to talk about, Adam launched a new show recently called Haman Nature, and I just wanted Adam to talk about that a little bit, because and talk about why and how it ties into what we're doing here.
Oh, thank you very much, Brian. Yep, it's called Haman Nature. If you put that into a YouTube search bar, it should come right up. And you can also check out the Substack for it at hamannature.substack.com, or you can just search, put in hamannature.com. That'll redirect to the same place. And yeah, I wanted to start my own show to augment what we do here on Natural Order, just to take a slightly different spin on many of the same issues, and also incorporate a bunch of interviews that I've been itching to do that haven't really fit into the format for what Brian and I do here thus far, although we might change that in the future. Who the hell knows? So I started a video show, and I hope you fine folk will check it out. It's Haman Nature. You can see my smiling face on it. It's on video, and it's fun. Right the moment of this recording, there are 2 episodes out, one on populism and sovereignty, and talking about Javier Milei in Argentina and what that portends. And the second one is an interview, or the first half of an interview I did with the great Stephan Kinsella, a libertarian political philosopher and IP lawyer and all-around smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great interview. I hope you check it out. hamannature.com, hamannature.substack.com, and Haman Nature on YouTube.
Yeah, there we go. All right. And then just to let you folks know, too, that I've got Brian D. O'Leary show that comes out regularly, hopefully more regularly, as we get into this 2024. And you just go to briand'oleary.com there for more. And we'll have links in the show notes for all this stuff, too. So don't worry about writing all these things down. We do that for you here at Natural Order Podcast. And you go, of course, to naturalorderpodcast.com for all of that. So, Adam, 2024, what's it look like? We're already a month in. As we're recording now. We're already a month in. Doesn't seem like it, but we are.
Looks like wine and roses so far, right?
Yeah. We do have the 2024 presidential cycle. I wouldn't say it's heating up. But it's
do you have thoughts?
Something.
I have thoughts. Do you have thoughts?
Got thoughts. I mean, I think the Democratic nomination is all but secure, barring a catastrophic health event for our dear leader, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Hallowed be thy name.
I mean, that is very possible. Guy's in his 80s, and he's not well in the dome, and who knows how his ticker's doing. But either way, the Republican nomination, Trump's got that more or less locked up, I would say. I don't see any evidence to the contrary. And I guess you asked me what I think about it all. It's all a comedy of errors as far as I'm concerned. but I did see there's this poll data, and the Trump camp, or Trump himself, famously disavows polls unless they're in his favor. But I saw some polling data not too long ago, and they asked this section of people like who they thought was going to win the election. Not who they were going to vote for, but who they thought. And it was like extraordinary. It was, I want to say, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was a 20 or 30, maybe 40 point gap, close to 40 point gap between people that thought Trump would win and people that thought Biden would win. And then there was obviously like the margin of error had different candidates, and RFK was in there, Haley was in there, but minor percentages. Then I saw a poll this morning, what people actually vote for, and Biden is at 50 and Trump's at 44, which seemed to me more realistic as far as, at least based on last election, what may or may not have happened, but how the numbers ultimately worked out. So I don't know. It's confusing.
It is a little confusing, and my thoughts on the matter have changed a little bit. I used to think that they would swap out Biden for Newsom here at some point in the process. And that doesn't look like that's happening. So I'm trying to figure out why. And to answer the question in my own mind, I used my my most trusty lens filter on the matter, which is that we are run by a deep state regime, and that who actually is sitting in the chair in the Oval Office doesn't really matter. So I think from that perspective, the regime just needs lackeys. It doesn't really matter who it is. I want someone to keep the spigots of money flowing to the war machine, the bankster machine, all the various corporate interests and other interests that have their snouts firmly in the public trough. And so they don't really, I thought they needed to swap out Biden for Newsom just so that the Dems, and therefore this iteration of the deep state, would have a reliable candidate who is electable, because Biden is so old. But they're not doing that. So why?
I would living in the state where Newsom reigns as monarch, he is only electable to the crazy half of California. There's a half of California that's normal, but he'll get the electoral vote here. The rest of the United States, they know who this guy is. He's a snake. He's a scoundrel. He's a bad guy.
And that factor piles on to my theme. I think the way they've solved this problem is they're not going to worry about whether a Democrat or Republican wins. I think they have anointed this viper, Nikki Haley, to be the agent of the regime on the Republican side. So therefore, they're just going to leave the Biden-Harris ticket alone, because obviously Biden will do their bidding, and there's no reason to think that Kamala Harris is going to be an independent president fighting back against the evil corporate interests that run the regime. And then they're going to rely on Nikki Haley to make their victory bulletproof. There's just this one very annoying, very large, very popular orange speed bump into that plan, and his name is Donald Trump, who, as you mentioned, is clearly running away with the nomination, barring some sort of thumb on the scale intervention.
Right.
And so that means
there's a lot of thumbs on that scale right now.
And we haven't seen them all yet.
No.
But let's run through a few.
Yeah.
They've tried sporadically in various states removing him from the ballot. That appears to be failing. They weaponized the Justice Department and many state prosecutors against him. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up putting him in jail. It looks ridiculous, but we live in a ridiculous world. They've sicked the FBI on him for 8 years and counting. Who knows what machinations will arise from that. And then if all that doesn't work, I don't believe these people are above just JFKing him. And if that doesn't work, they can always put their thumb on the scale of the opaque election system we have in this country. I don't know if any rigging has occurred, but then again, how would I know? We cannot really audit these things.
We had a whole episode that attacked that kind of thing. But,
precisely.
Yeah.
So I think that's the plan. And the only thing that we've got standing in their way is this doofus, this Trump guy, who's It's not like he's good on anything. It's not like
Well,
he's not knowledgeable. He just has a few good instincts and a bunch of horrible ones, and he's got
right.
the populist support behind him from people who think they're being screwed correctly.
Uh-huh.
And for some reason, they don't have many saviors. They've chosen this one.
Yeah, and like the deep state you're talking about hates populism. They hate it.
Yeah,
Every
of course they do.
populist
Yeah.
candidate is pretty much, they've gone against them. You know, I'd say Richard Nixon was a hugely populist candidate. He's not a conservative, and we talked about this in the past, but he was a populist, man. He reached out to the same type of voter that, say, a large portion of the Trump electorate is, and they got him when, you know, a prank gone wrong, essentially Watergate. But we'll, you know, that's for another time. Interesting. You say the orange guy, Trump, is a doofus. On what was that, Tuesday, the 30th, President Joseph Biden, in his official account, tweeted this out, or whatever, posted it on Twitter X, whatever it's called. I know how hard it is some days to sweep the clouds away and get to sunnier days. Our friend Elmo is right. We have to be there for each other, offer our help to a neighbor in need, and above all else, ask for help when we need it. Even though it's hard, you're never alone.
Well, in 2020, we had a good old-fashioned doofus off, and we might get another one.
Yeah. Not to say that the sentiment isn't right, but he's what they call quote tweeting Elmo, the official Elmo account, or maybe not the official. I don't know. No check mark on Elmo, but
I only heard about this peripherally. Is
I
it
did
true
too.
that tweet came out at 2:30 a.m. Eastern time?
Came out.
Was he a very early riser, or is that just someone on his staff who'd been drinking?
6:26 p.m. Whether that's 9:26 p.m. Eastern, I don't know. I don't know what the timestamp is. But he could have tweeted more. This is just one I found because I'd heard or seen that Elmo was trending on Twitter, and I was like, gosh, why would Elmo? Apparently the president brings him into view, but so like that's not serious. Is my point. That's not a serious man. And this is not Joseph Biden himself tweeting this. This is some of his underlings clearly doing his social media, but these aren't serious people.
Well, I think it's a payoff to Big Sesame Street.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta pay off your donors, Brian.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
all right, I have a non-political prediction,
okay.
So we can sort of we talk a lot of politics on this show. Let's do a non-political prediction. Movies, baby.
Oh.
Cinema. The Academy. I'm going to take a real big risk here, and I'm going to predict that the winner of Best Picture for this year will be Oppenheimer.
Which we talked about
big
last
year.
I'm
really sticking my neck out. It's only at betting odds have it at minus 900 this morning.
Wow.
So
might have to watch that.
It's good. You should.
Though I did recently watch the latest incarnation of Mission Impossible.
Oh, I haven't yet. It's a two-parter, right? I'm waiting for the second one to drop.
Two-parter. I don't even know if they've started filming, but it's supposed to come out in 2025. But,
yeah, I like that franchise. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've talked about it. I don't know, or written about it. I'm not sure, but the whole idea of it's not necessarily a great movie, you know, like you pick it apart. It's not, but it's fun, and it's entertainment. And Tom Cruise is not a great actor, but he's a great movie star. And
he has to be a great actor, Brian, because he manages to get us all to suspend our disbelief that a midget can be an action hero.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah.
That's acting, my friend.
Well, it goes to show. I read this book a few years back, on John Wayne. And John Wayne wasn't a particularly great actor, but he's a great movie star.
You take that back, Pilgrim.
Yeah. But the thing is, John Wayne would only take John Wayne roles. Tom Cruise only takes Tom Cruise roles. He got established early enough that that's what he can do. So, and then, you know, like Steve McQueen later in his career, would only take Steve McQueen roles. He was the biggest movie star in the world. So I think it's interesting that a good movie doesn't have, the blockbuster type stuff. If they have a good movie star, it can be a terrible movie, but people will still see it and enjoy it.
True enough.
Yeah.
Well, I have another political prediction, but maybe I should give you a turn at bat.
Well, we talked the presidential election, and we got the Super Bowl coming up here a week and a half from when we're recording, and Taylor Swift is on the front of mind for a lot of folks, and people are saying out there, like, man, Taylor Swift opens her mouth, and she can change the flavor of the election just as she can the flavor of the NFL season, just by being there.
Rise, my Swifties, rise. Do my bidding.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, I do not at all understand the appeal of Taylor Swift. I could be mistaken. I do not get it. She's been in the public eye, I think, probably for about 20 years or more now. I've never got it from the beginning. I don't get it now. I don't know a single one of her songs. And I don't get the phenomenon, but I'm not plugged into that world. And hopefully my 4-year-old daughter doesn't ever get plugged into that, but we'll see. But, I mean, clearly...
She could do worse.
Yeah, clearly she'll be in the Biden camp, just her demographic certainly is. So she opens her mouth about anything. There's going to be a segment of voters, I don't know how big it will be, that will just go to the ballot box because Taylor Swift said to, and like, you can't do anything about that. Not that I necessarily want to or whatever, but she has that appeal. She has her own cult, just like the Trump people have their own cult. Fortunately enough, the Democrats don't have that cult right now with Biden and Harris. There's no reason to have that.
That's not very culty.
Yeah, but
well, you've buried the lead here, Brian.
Okay.
Do you believe in the conspiracy theories that her rise is not organic, her support for the Democrats is not organic? George Soros stepped in and bought her music catalog a while back, and that was a weird type of thing for him to invest in.
Is that true?
I don't put. It's what I hear. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't put any stock in these things myself, at least not without more evidence, but I was curious if you had an opinion.
No, I think that, yeah, her probably rise whenever she was a teenager, I think, was relatively organic. I don't know.
Yeah, she's a good pop. She writes good pop songs. It's not exactly what I'm into, but I've listened to a few. They're good. I mean, they're good. I'm not surprised she's popular.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's just like, but the whole thing is like, yeah, I don't know, the conspiracy thing. I'm not saying, but my point is that she's so popular that she can open her mouth and people will do her bidding, just like the NFL has done to some degree. Cause like, they want, Kansas City was a great, they're a great team. They've been to the Super Bowl several times in the last few years, but her being the girlfriend of the Kelsey guy who plays tight end for him is just another distraction. And if anything, it happens in the NBA too. Like, there's not like a command that say, oh, make the Chiefs win. But if something is a little, borderline, well, we'll give it to the Chiefs, just like we give it to the Lakers or the Bulls or,
sure, the star factor.
The star factor. Yeah. And it's real.
The marginal calls will go Michael Jordan's way.
It's real. And I've watched NBA games, playoff games with former NBA players, and they are scripting this out, how this will go. And I, had to pick my jaw off the floor the first time. Like somebody pointed out to me that it was real, but it is what it is. The star factor is huge in sports, and it's not just like these elections. It's not totally rigged, unless your name is Scott Foster, or Tim Donaghy, but in the NBA. But yeah, I think calls going one way or another just because they can, and there's no, and the officials don't necessarily have anything in it other than just like, it'd probably be a little nicer for everybody if
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll point out that I think the main reason that anti-Dems conspiracy-minded folks on the right, they have their antennae quivering over this issue, is because it's weird that she's dating him, and it's annoying that he was such a well-known and highly paid proponent of the Pfizer
Yeah, I was
vax
going to say
on
Mr.
TV
Pfizer.
commercials over and over and over. And so if you swallowed the whole bottle of red pills rather than just the one that was prescribed, you start to see conspiracies everywhere.
Yeah, it is crazy that the guy's just, well, whatever. The whole Mr. Pfizer thing is
All right, well,
I
let's
don't know.
move on.
You stop me. You stop me. Speech. I just can't. It's insane.
It's one of my sub
Mhm.
motivations on
Yeah.
this show, Brian, is to make you speechless.
Mhm. Good.
So let's move back to politics and the race in the U.S. Senate.
Oh.
As it currently stands, there's 51 Democratic senators and 49 Republicans, and there are 34 seats up this year.
Mm.
And of those 34, currently 23 of those are Democrats. So Republicans can take control of the Senate by gaining 2 seats on that, or just 1 seat and winning the presidency, giving a ostensible Republican the tie-breaking vote in the Senate.
Yeah.
And I believe that's going to happen. I think that the Republicans will take the Senate this year.
Okay.
With the normal caveat that elections aren't real and we live in a simulation, and who the hell knows, this is all worse than a coin flip.
It's interesting. I don't know how this works, or the algorithm, or how much money is getting paid, but if I'm on my Twitter feed, I almost always see an ad from, is it Jackie Rosen in Nevada, where your home state? She's running against a unnamed Republican, I guess, and she's complaining that Mitch McConnell is throwing all this money at her, or at her opponent, and I think it's unnamed. I don't really know. I don't keep up with it, but all I know is this Jackie Rosen character is in my Twitter feed all the time, complaining and whining about Republicans. She's clearly a Democrat here, and it's so funny to see the replies, because everybody goes after her on this. It's like, just give it up. So I don't know how much money is being sunk into these things by paying Twitter their ad fee to constantly be in there, but I don't know of any other race really right now at this point other than that one in the presidential race. It's interesting, and you seem to not even have much of an idea on this race.
They must have confused your Twitter profile with mine as far as the algorithms and the ad generation.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of this complaining from Ms. Rosen, and I don't have much to say about her. I do know that the money that gets spent by these Democrats is amazing, and they'll throw it at anything. Like in the last election cycle here in Nevada, some of our mostly paper libertarian candidates were having high-quality, double-sided, glossy ads, and lots of them sent out to everybody in their voting district to vote libertarian. And this is all paid for by a Democratic PAC.
Oh, really?
Just to use their, this is a lever they can pull to try and get, a third party to steal the vote away from a Republican. And they spent a lot of money on minor races,
How
just
magnanimous.
Assembly districts. Huh?
How magnanimous.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, they're for us. They really support our philosophy. No, It's dirty. And I don't normally care, because we wouldn't field a candidate if the Republican wasn't equally awful from a libertarian perspective. I just find it corrupt and amusing. And they will spend money. Right. So who knows how much they're paying their hated Elon Musk in order to try and move the needle.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because I saw this morning, I'll put it in the show notes here, a tweet that talked about the filings for the DeSantis PAC. I can't remember the name of it right offhand, but it's over, right? DeSantis suspended his campaign. I'm not sure it's over, but I think if I read this correctly, they spent $130 million, this PAC, on the campaign to finish a miserable second by the time he dropped out. Miserable. And the question is, like, what is going on here? Like, this PAC was clearly not on Ron DeSantis' side. They were on their own side trying to make money off this election, I think.
Isn't that always the way?
That's what it looks like. Because DeSantis, well, I don't necessarily agree with everything. I think he was the best candidate in this race that we've seen so far. All things being equal, I would have much rather seen DeSantis in there than anybody else, but his messaging got fuzzy. The people around him I think were giving him terrible advice on like when to go in and when to fight. And Trump just like, bull in a china shop. Politics.
He ragdolled him.
And he doesn't even care. Like, he's like, no, he called DeSantis all kinds of names, Ron DeSanctimonious, DeSanctus, all this stuff constantly. And then now he's like, fine, no, he's just Ron DeSantis to me. He's just Ron. And who knows? He could be the next vice president. And Trump doesn't care. That's an old school politics with Trump. And meanwhile, DeSantis and all these other folks around him were trying to play it nice to see if they could appeal to some fantasy of a good portion of Democrats voting for him. It's just not that way anymore. We don't live in that world. Anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to happen. We're more polarized than we've ever been.
Yeah, clearly.
If you'll allow me, I do have another political prediction I want to slip in there.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that after the break. We'll take a quick break and come back to you. Been thinking about starting that new podcast of yours? Having trouble figuring out how to do it, perhaps? Never fear. We were in that same spot a few years back. At O'Leary & Company, we don't have all of it licked. But we've gone through the struggles of setting up those podcasts and those side gigs so that you don't have to. And you can go to o'learyandcompany.com for more details. That's o'learyandcompany.com. All right, we're back. Natural Order Podcast. And Adam had another political take that he wanted to, chime in
Well,
on?
thanks, Brian. And much like with my Oppenheimer as Best Picture prediction, I'm kind of going out on a limb here.
Okay.
Not sure if you're aware, but in our friendly denizen of the globe neighbor, Russia, there is a presidential election this year. And I don't know who you like. There's 4 candidates that I'm aware of. There's 4.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've heard of this fellow. He's running as an independent. His name is Putin, Vladimir Putin. And even though the other candidates look good, a fellow named Nikolai Kharitonov, running on the Communist Party, is opposing him. Also, a fellow named Leonid Slutsky, of the Liberal Democratic Party of Russia. You've heard of that party, Brian. And last but not least, Vladislav Davenkov, of a melded party, the New People Party and the Party of Growth. So that's two parties for the price of one. And I don't know, even though the field is crowded and competitive, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Putin's going to win.
Yeah, I say you read the Cyrillic alphabet quite well if you're able to interpret all that.
I'm sure I butchered all of that.
Yeah, what was the deal? So Putin was in, and then he was out, and then he's been in forever. Did they change the Russian rules or constitution, or was he prime minister and then became president? Or he's always been in charge. He's always been the head man.
Well, remember
they had Medvedev or whatever his name was there for a little bit.
They formed a new country out of the corpse of the Soviet Union not that long ago. So I'm pretty sure the rules are still written in pencil, if not crayon. Right. They're not trying to stick to a firm constitution. He was like
literally not the president or prime minister, or maybe he was one and not the other. One had de facto power and one had de jure power. Putin always had the de facto power.
Right. I'm not knowledgeable enough to speak on this, but my guess is that even when he gave up the presidency, he didn't really give up control. No. He was transitioning into a behind the scenes figure, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. His puppet broke the strings or was incompetent or something.
Yeah,
So
go
he
Vlad.
muzzled his way back in.
Go Vlad. I think the reality is that he's, there's four parties, as opposed to these old communist elections where there was one candidate and you still got to vote. At least there's four candidates. The thing is, like, he's very popular in his homeland of Russia, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, you could easily dismiss this as, propaganda, but I don't think that's the case. I think he is genuinely popular.
Yeah, I can't imagine
for
that.
a lot of nationalist type reasons.
Yeah.
And he's viewed as tough and competent and smart. And if your foil is the idiots in the West, well, you probably do look tough and competent and smart.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a ton of horrible things to say about Putin, but I don't have a lot of great things to say about him either. I mean, I know
appears to be a murderer.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a Russian
care
patriot.
about things like that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, Putin. We're gonna put that. Take that down to your local sports book there in Vegas.
Oh, of course. I've got the house bet on it. Wouldn't you?
Okay. All right.
What else you got for us? Wow us with your clairvoyance.
So, funny, I think January 26th came and went. It was the day that we were supposed to become engulfed in civil war because of the Texas border dispute. And it was interesting, it's building up to this heat that, folks like me, or probably you, I'm not going to speak for you right now, but this would be great. This would be great to see how the Constitution actually works and see Texas defend itself and kick the feds out because it's Texas property, not federal property on the border. And these people within the state have a right to defend themselves against invaders. And clearly the country or state of Texas is being invaded by the third world. And on the Mexican border, though, as we alluded to last episode of the episode before, it's not primarily Mexicans that are crossing the border. I mean, if it were, in these cities that they're what we talked about off air, you got a lot of border towns in Texas. They are, well, I don't even know the word, but they're twin cities essentially where people work or live back and forth. Laredo, Texas is one. Nogales, Arizona is another in particular that come to mind. But these are not what we're talking about. We're talking about this massive third world immigration coming from Asia, Africa, Middle East. That people are somehow getting to Mexico and then crossing the border in droves, and people from South America traveling through Mexico up to the border. It's crazy. I don't know if you have any more insight on that.
No, we spoke about this a little bit. I'll note that it doesn't seem organic, and I don't know about the individual people who are coming, but the plot to move them here doesn't. It seems nefarious. And beyond that, I'll say that state governments, like all governments, can be tyrannical and oppressive, and I'm not on their side in general. Certainly not vis-a-vis private institutions and individuals, but we have a federal system in this country, and in 2024, the federal government has become a bloated, monstrous, oppressive leviathan, and therefore I am thrilled that states' rights is rearing its head as a concept, nullification is rearing its head as an idea, the history of it, interposition. I'm thrilled that the state is flouting laws on guns, on drugs. I don't agree with the sanctuary city ethos, but I'm glad to see smaller polities interposing themselves against the federal government. That's simply because I think the federal government is just poisonously large and evil and oppresses us at every turn. So
yeah. I would agree with the sentiment.
I have a nuanced opinion about immigration, but I'm very, very, very glad that Texas and these other however many 20-some states that have signed on in support of them is saying, your policy isn't popular and it's not what we want, and to hell with you. We want our borders protected. You're not doing the job as is. You're not even following the law of the land, so we're going to do something about it.
Yeah, and I agree
And
with
that doesn't mean
I agree with the sentiment here. The problem is, I think it's one of Tom Woods' laws. It's like at the end of the day, people don't do anything. So nothing happened.
True.
They're not doing anything different. This was supposed to like coalesce into Texas like standing up for itself, and they just kind of just withered away and buckled, and like it's status quo ante.
So this is a prediction episode, Brian. Are you admitting that you had predicted Civil War? And
no, I didn't. I never predicted
Secessionist
Civil War. I kind of got my hopes up, but as I think Spengler says, optimism is cowardice. So I don't want to be a coward there and be particularly optimistic on this on that front.
Yeah, it makes me wonder.
And I'm not rooting for war, but I agree. I'm rooting for the principle of just splitting this up and not in a physical war. But I think to be optimistic about that at this point with the people involved, I got my hopes up too much, and they always let you down.
Did that huge convoy make it down to the border, and did anything happen? I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. I was so worried that it was going to turn into a huge honeypot, like a J6 trap where
I think that's what
the feds would just hope that some right-wing lunatics would do something insane, kill somebody, and
maybe that's why it kind of fizzled out or
right.
demurred in some respect. It because people got wise to it. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna be falsely accused of doing something, even if I was in the vicinity.
And you're really not going to protect the border with your big rig.
You can't.
I mean, that's not. This is just for show.
What was the Minutemen back in the old Tea Party days? They had standing guard and that didn't really do a whole lot. I mean, you run into a whole lot of humanitarian. I mean, what if some guy's just crossing the border? He just wants to see his family, just like one guy, and it's like, are you gonna like shoot him? Or are you gonna what are you gonna go arrest some guy across? No, the problem is like these thousands of people at a time just like busting through, and then they scatter up to whatever city in the rest of the United States. No wonder all these other governors are standing with Texas. It's because like all these people just like we don't have room for it. And another interesting thing is with all
we do have room for them. That's not true. What we don't have is room for them plus this massive idiotic welfare state.
True. Yeah.
And obviously there's a voting component to this too. There's really no reason. I don't believe that the government should be prohibiting the movement of people, but there's no reason you should be able to cross a border and vote yourself some of my stuff. That's obviously unjust. So again, this isn't an immigration show, and my opinion on this is much more nuanced than you ordinarily hear on the TV. But
right,
I don't think those Minutemen guys were a good idea. I hope that was mostly for show. I hope they didn't shoot anybody. Yeah. Protect your own private property,
Right. Yeah, and I think so. The whole point of bringing this up is that I was thinking that we could be like election year, something's really going to heat up, and this might be, something to think about for every American, but I think it's just going to be washed out in the news cycle real soon. I really do. And we're just going to let things go on, let Biden do whatever he wants, and let this thing happen. I could be wrong. Hopefully I am wrong, because I don't want, optimism is cowardice. So I don't want to be too optimistic.
So I was tempted to make a prediction about the economy.
Okay.
But as we mentioned in the show where we talked about Austrian economics, you can sort of tell what would happen, ceteris paribus, using these tools and insights, but predicting timing of things is impossible. And all this monetary inflation is obviously causing price inflation. All else equal, it has to. But I am frankly astonished that it hasn't obliterated the currency and crashed our economy yet, which means I guess we keep getting more productive despite all the horrible The PC revolution made us productive. The internet made us productive. AI is making us much more productive. We're learning how to transport goods and run retail, much more efficiently, thanks to Walmart first, and then Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And so I don't know. We keep innovating, and I think that's the only thing saving us because, oh my lord, the monetary inflation is bad, and it shows all the signs of getting worse. Nobody cares about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people used to be shocked about the size of the Fed's balance sheet or the deficit, and not anymore.
Yeah, timing. Yeah, like you said, timing the crash is a fool's errand. I tried. I was kind of doing some work a number of years ago, trying to figure out looking at financial data and economic data from years past, trying to predict when this next cycle or trough or would happen. And having a bit of Austrian background, I'm like, yeah, I see a lot of this happening, but like again, you can't exactly time it because nobody else necessarily thinks that way, and their motivations are different. And when I think about that, and you say like, how could it not have crashed? Like, how could the economy not have crashed? Well, the U.S. dollar is the strongest currency out there, or the U.S. economy. It props that up in many ways, or the U.S. empire. I did a podcast with Jason Purcell. It's a 3-part podcast. The third one, as you're listening to this, should be released right about the same time we get this one out. But we have a 3-part podcast where he debunks the whole traditional idea of the petrodollar, as it were. And it's interesting to go through that. And you could just go to briandleary.com for more on there, or just search my Brian D. O'Leary show on your podcatcher and listen to that with show with Jason. But the interesting thing is this: the U.S. dollar is not this oil dollar, this petrodollar. It is propped up by debt. It is propped up by debt. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre how this all works. But we walk through it, and I'm just like confounded how this works. But and it is the strongest currency out there, so of course it's afloat. Like, it's just so. It's going to crash, and when it crashes, it's going to crash horribly. But right now, like, everybody's scared, it seems like. Or all these other countries are scared that they can't compete with the U.S. dollar with hard currency or whatever, because this isn't the way things have gone in the post, New Deal era or New Deal on.
So here's
era.
a question
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not increases in productivity that are saving the dollar, if it is, as you say, that the U.S. dollar is bad, okay, but compared to what? And all these other central bank currencies are just as fraudulent and inflated and corrupt and evil.
If not more.
So if that's true, is it the case that if the inevitable collapse when it happens and our currency crashes, when that happens, does that mean that all currencies will collapse? Or will it be localized to just us and our biggest trading partners?
Maybe the central bank currencies backed by debt. Now, if they have commodity backed currencies, perhaps, or metal backed currencies, who knows? But they don't. It might be a dead cat bounce for everybody, like it just drops, and then we're back at a lower level for everything. I don't know. Who knows? Smack.
Well, at the end of the day, the ultimate currency is probably bullets.
Yeah. Brass.
So I don't know. Do you have any more predictions?
Well, I mean, along that line, I wasn't planning on talking about it a whole lot, but there is Bitcoin, and I'm not huge in the whole Bitcoin infrastructure, Bitcoin world, but I did on my aforementioned other podcasts, Brian D. O'Leary show. I had Wesley Schlemmer on. He talked about building wealth with Bitcoin and using Bitcoin within a circular economy. And they're doing a very good job of it down in Tampa, Florida. At least it's starting small. And probably this episode will be out after they have their big launch of Bitcoin Bay this weekend, February 2nd or 3rd, something like that.
Yeah, Wesley's great. I wish him and his efforts well. And I don't have any particular opinion about Bitcoin, except since it is trying to be a competing currency to fiat, I wish them well.
True. Yeah, but
I had
I
one
would
thing I
also I would
wanted.
also recommend here. Sorry, Adam, to interrupt, but if you listen to this show on Fountain.fm, you can earn Bitcoin while
Right.
listening, and we'll have the link if you want to sign up. We'll have the link in the show notes there, and you don't earn a ton. It's in the form of satoshis over the Lightning Network. You got to learn about Bitcoin, but go back to a previous episode I had with Wesley where I say walk. Wesley, walk me through it like I'm 7, because that's what I think a lot of us need to know. But anyway, yeah, and then that can support this show and support yourself at the same time. It's kind of wonderful how it all works. But anyway, continue, my friend.
No, absolutely. All good advice. My next prediction is more of a trend. I mean, we've already seen this happen, but did you see? You know, Javier Milei gave a great speech at the World Economic Forum here recently. Did you see the AI created English translation of that speech?
Oh, I probably did, because I was like, how the heck is this guy?
Yeah, he does not know English.
That's what I thought.
But
I was like,
and yet you can go on and watch a video of
English
him.
for a guy that was maybe doesn't even speak it.
That's a computer, but it's got his voice, it's got his accent, and it's manipulated the face and the head and the mouth to form English words in time with the AI-generated English speech. I think it's incredible.
I think your friend Bob Murphy did that with one of his episodes into Spanish.
He did, in Spanish. Yeah. And so I just wanted to point that out and say, you know, we've already seen deep fakes, and my prediction for this year is we're going to see some super sinister deep fakes that will cause a move in public opinion in one direction or another. And I don't know enough about the tech to know how well those can be debunked or spotted.
Yeah.
But we live in a video. I mean, we used to say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And people just believe videos when they see them. And if you can make such a good deep fake, well,
yeah.
I mean, you can show a video of Donald Trump.
Well, I heard a great somebody. Donald Trump country song the other day. I think it was a AI voice with his accent.
I've heard a few.
Or no, it might have been a rap. I can't remember what it was. Some genre music, but yeah.
I have a white pill for it too, which is that as dangerous as deepfakes are, and how we need to keep on our toes, I think what's going to end up happening is people are going to be less gullible. Once it becomes much more known how easily you can be tricked, I think people just won't automatically believe the thing they see scrolling through the social media. Well, we've been pretty goddamn gullible for a long time.
The best tell right now is to look at the fingers or look at the hands.
Yeah, well, so they'll figure out how to do fingers
hands
eventually.
Or 6 fingers or whatever. But interestingly, you say that about the deepfakes. There's a guy, I haven't seen him. He's on Instagram or Twitter or something like that. But he's been doing this deepfake thing as Tom Cruise, the aforementioned Tom Cruise.
I saw that
for a long time, and he looks vaguely like Tom Cruise, but maybe some of the facial structures, hairline maybe vaguely the same. But they can transform him into Tom Cruise, and he does all this crazy stuff like Tom Cruise doing normal things and people not doing anything because you can't. But anyway, that company, I think that does all this deepfake. They also did a deal on. I want to say it's America's Got Talent, the show on NBC, where they had a guy up on stage, and obviously, like if you're in the crowd, you can't really see, but they had on the giant monitors. This guy's Elvis from like 1957, and his voice. So his voice sounds very much like early days Elvis. So he was doing the singing, but they were deep faking up on the monitors.
Oh, wow.
And then they had this and then, you see Simon Cowell's jaw drop, like, how the heck is this possible? Then they one-upped it, and then they did something where they deep-faked Simon Cowell's head singing something, or he's sitting there in the stands. He's not singing. He's just looking at this, like, puzzled and like, all right, move on to the next round, pal, kind of thing.
Yeah, things are getting weird.
So, yeah, it's an interesting time in which we live.
Well, let me give you one more before we wrap, because it's super brief.
All right.
Javier Milei won the presidency
Oh,
in
yeah.
Argentina by running not only as a libertarian or libertarian leaning, but as a radical anarcho-capitalist libertarian, citing Milton Friedman and Murray Rothbard and F.A. Hayek. And
Mm-hmm.
it's much less of a victory size-wise, but a woman in Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, won the mayoral race, and she's not a pure libertarian, but when asked in this nonpartisan race, she said her political philosophy is a libertarian one.
Mm-hmm.
And she was hit and miss on exactly understanding what that political philosophy is. But my point being, as people in our camp used to say 50 years ago, you could name all the libertarians in the country on 2 hands and 2 feet.
Right.
And now the movement is much, 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 much bigger, comprised of many very powerful and influential voices, of which we are too. And you can win sometimes large political office by openly espousing libertarian political principles. And I think that's an encouraging trend. And I will cautiously predict that trend continues in some way or another. Maybe not in the Libertarian Party, although maybe. But we're rubbing off on other parties. Our ideas are a nice, healthy virus.
Not the Democrats too much.
It could be. It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, what if the pendulum swings, right? What if the next version of authoritarianism is right wing?
Mm-hmm.
California wanted to secede when Donald Trump was elected. Political decentralization? What? Hey, what? They've been nullifying drug laws.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Well, it's interesting to me,
idea.
like from my end, more right wing type of guy, with like a lot of libertarian sympathies. But probably my favorite 2 politicians in the Senate and the House anyway right now would be Thomas Massie for sure, and Rand Paul, which they would espouse themselves as libertarians, but the Venn diagram from my beliefs, whether you agree with them every jot and tittle, like, yes, I want those guys in every position across the board. Even if they're not going to go like full on where I want to go, it's a major step, and it's a major transformation from the status quo, the Nikki Haley types, which are just insane that people will vote in Lindsey Graham. I mean, South Carolina, which is like a wonderful place, but they have some insane people over the years as their political people. I mean, right now, like Lindsey Graham and Nikki Haley is their most notable folks, and they're just treacherous human beings. And anyway, more Thomas Massie's and Rand Paul's in there, and I don't know. I don't see those guys as ever right now anyway. Like it's like optimism is cowardice once again, but yeah, those guys, if they were ever to run for president in a real form, they're just going to get killed, just like Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul. Like he was by far the best candidate, but he just got no love from the deep state, as you call it, and just washed out. But I've got my Ron Paul buttons. I've got my Ron Paul books. He's by far the most influential presidential candidate in the last
Well, here's another white pill. I don't want to make you a coward or anything, but
please.
In the Ron Paul runs, they used the devious machinations of the RNC to screw with him.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing they used to screw with him is controlling public opinion by having a vice grip on the media, controlling those organs. And that control is shattering now. People are no longer getting all their news from these decrepit old institutions.
No, but it's still there. It's still there enough.
Voices.
And certainly in 2020, it was loud and clear.
Loud and clear. I'm just saying it's shattering. It's cracking.
It is. And I think that's good. And I think maybe we need to start our own TV network, but cart before the horse here.
I'll settle for a contract on one of the others.
Yeah, I agree with you that the media is shattering, but again, they have a stranglehold on opinion of people that are probably, a good block of people that are older than we are, let's say, and whether the influence is outpacing maybe the actual numbers, if that makes sense. I would go as far as saying you see some of these Twitter accounts. 60 Minutes was one for as popular as 60 Minutes supposedly is, or like it was in the cultural zeitgeist for years, for decades. They get moderate amounts of like a normal guy could get more likes and views than the 60 Minutes account, which is just strange to me that people don't care about that stuff now. But whatever they say will then get trumpeted out to all these other so you eventually hear it. That's my point. You might not hear it from the horse's mouth, but you eventually hear that over.
Well, it used to be the case that you'd get lied to by the mainstream media, and you'd know it, and you wouldn't have any other choices. So you'd listen to them again. That's not the case anymore.
True.
And as people slowly start to wake up to the fact that, oh, yeah, these people are just trying to manipulate me. They're telling me outright falsehoods. Now they do have options. And that trend can only continue until, I don't know, they weaponize the FEC to make folks like you and me illegal. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're winning the information battle, and then we're going to win the ideological battle, and then maybe we can live free and peaceful and prosperous.
Coward. All right. I will we'll leave it at that for today, and maybe get back to future predictions here down the road. But we just want to wrap up. I want to wrap up by saying, go check out Adam's new show, Haman Nature. And then we'll have links to that in the show notes. And then my show, The Brian D. O'Leary Show, where you can find on every podcatcher also. And we'll have links for that in the show notes. Any last words from you, Adam?
No, except great show, Brian. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And Natural Order Podcast, where you go, and we'll chat with you down the line. Good day. For more, head on over to naturalorderpodcast.com. Show notes for today's episode can be found at naturalorderpodcast.com/EP18. That's naturalorderpodcast.com/EP18. And don't forget to check out Haman Nature on YouTube and hamannature.com. And also head on over to briandO'Leary.com, where you can find new episodes, old episodes, archive of The Brian D. O'Leary Show, and more. Thanks again.